Hello. Hey, Gunjan. Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Holy cow, that's such a compulsory thing for me to say. I seriously, it's like I try to bring it up every time and I actually don't. I just can't remember to say something other than good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. I think it has something to do with coffee being in the hand. So it's just, I don't know. Well, so Sime was just on a second ago, and I think he's having technical difficulties. I'm actually having a little difficulty. I joined with the wrong browser. I'm going to switch over to Chrome in case I need to share the screen, so there might be a blip here. Bear with me. All right, very good. I think I'm back. Okay, well, I know we've got at least Sime left to attend. I suspect we'll have a couple of others coming in. I'm hesitant to kick it off just yet. Let me ping Simon, see if he's. Oh. Hey, Simon. Hey, Adina.
Hey.
Hey. Very good. Okay. And then, Simon, I know you're probably having some audio video issues earlier, so hopefully you're okay now. All right, the meeting minutes going into chat. Okay, very good. I think we're all here. I think this is our first ever continuous integration working group meeting. So this is nice. What a cool thing to be able to kick off a working group and have this many people show up. That first of all, our ability to start a working group is a sign of growth in the community and in the Meshery project in specific. So this is nice. I've been waiting for this day. I think we might be on the verge of opening up a second working group, which is fantastic. Being able to open up working groups is in no small part due to folks like Adina and Sime, who have, well, whether their arms were twisted or not, they've both agreed to help lead this working group and make sure that it kind of gets off the ground and sort of establishes a cadence, begins to set some priorities towards things that the group wants to accomplish. I consider that that there's a lot of interesting ways in which there's a lot of interesting things that I think that this working group can accomplish. Some of them are, I suspect, maybe a little bit of new tech for some of us on the call, which is kind of neat, or maybe existing tech that we're familiar with, but maybe using it in slightly different ways. I'm going to give some examples of what I mean by that in a minute, by what we can do with some of those workflows. And then some other things that I think that the group will take on will be really meaningful for Meshery as a project and Layer 5 as a community. Meshery as a project because it's a little awkward, but at the moment, while we do version Meshery server, or Meshery, the core set of container images that run the project, we don't control those versions very well. we don't control the release of those versions rather very well. And so there's much work to be done here in this group. In this particular group, as it gets off the ground, my intention is to have my voice in particular sort of fade to the background. Today and next time we meet, that as you guys as a working group and Adina and Simon begin to steward our focus here, that I'm just a facilitator. I'm the guy pressing the record button because I think I'm the only one that has it. But we'll actually get that fixed as well. So so on that, I'm going to say a couple more things and then try to start being quiet. And that is that folks are doing precisely what I would hope for them to do, which is filling in their name if they're attending. And I think what we might be doing in this format is sort of listing out, Simon, correct me if I'm wrong, but it looks like we're probably listing out those that are invited. And then if you're in attendance, maybe putting your name in bold or something like that. Is that right? And I think Simon might only be able to text, so I'll try to.
Yes, Lee. Good.
Oh, okay, good. And so, Simon, is that right? Of the names that you have listed in the doc, these are the folks that are people that are invited to the call? Those that actually attend, should they just kind of bold their name or something like that?
I think as stands is good. I think it's reasonably good. Names that looks nice, good.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, and the reason that we'll want to try to create some signal that folks are in attendance is that at some point we will learn. We will probably reach a point by which we're so organized that as people take on roles and responsibilities, and hopefully that they're also gaining a lot of reward from those roles. Should we? My hunch is that we will probably end up instituting something of a tie-breaking vote type set of rules, where if we have a contentious issue at some point that we need to overcome somehow, that we might do voting on that issue, which seems. I don't think we haven't kind of written this governance in place, but part of that voting and the ability to vote might be predicated upon people's either attendance, which is not always the best thing to sometimes it's hard for people to attend, but they're still contributing very well. So anyway, my point is it would be good if we could signify attendance somehow, because I think that'll play into what it means to contribute. And ultimately what it might mean to vote on a contentious issue. So good. One thing that I missed very briefly, and that is that I think each of us that are on the call have been on one of our calls before, except for maybe Nitish Kumar. I'm gonna.
Yeah, highly.
Hey, good, great to have you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, Nitish, do you want to introduce yourself and just let everybody get to know you a little bit?
Yeah, hi guys. My name is Nitish, and I have around 9 years of experience. So worked as a full stack developer and as a backend engineer, and currently working as a lead DevOps engineer in GMT. So I'm familiar with multiple technologies and new to Kubernetes and service mesh. Looking forward to learn by contributing to the Meshery.
Nice. Very good. I'll speak for myself and say, Nitish, you're in good company if you're still learning any of that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
And thanks for inviting to this community.
Oh yeah.
Thank you.
Very nice to have you.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. A couple other housekeeping items, and then I'll try to be quiet. And that is that as you look over the meeting minutes, a couple of things have been set up specific to this working group to hopefully help all of us organize ourselves. One of, wait, I'm looking at, I'm sorry, I think I'm looking at the wrong screen. Everyone sees the meeting minutes now that I'm sharing, right? I think that's the deal. Okay, stop me if not. But one of those is very good. One of those is that there's been a new label inside of GitHub called area/CI, and that's just there to help us try to organize the set of concerns across the repositories, kind of all of the repositories in the layer 5 org that are concerned with, that this working group might be concerned with. That's one item. Another item is a bit of a longer document describing sort of both, I think, the state of where we are in terms of how it is that builds are done, the various artifacts that are produced in those builds, which artifact repositories we're using today for those, to store and persist and keep a history and versioning of those artifacts. And kind of the document goes on. I think it also is, I believe in some areas, aspirational for where we would probably ideally go. And so I'll call out that link. So these are just kind of common tools that we might use in this group. Another one is that, so all of you, except for Nitish, we'll make sure that you do if you don't, but all of you have access to a team drive, a Google Team drive that we use as a community drive. There's I'm not sure if this is the best structure at the moment, but there's a CI working group folder that has the meeting minutes at the moment. It is under community. I think there's a little bit of restructuring that might make sense because there's a build and release folder that has a few other, that has the document that we were just looking at and a few other artifacts. But point is that I expect that we're producing artifacts in this working group and we'll need a home for those. There's a Slack channel that's kind of specific to this area of focus. So all the names on this list, I believe are in there. Everyone's welcome to jump in. And then, and so we've got a link to the meeting that everyone, that hopefully works for the most of the people that join. This was one of those meeting times that we took a vote on recently. We are recording our meeting, so it's just kind of a housekeeping note to mention that, hey, this meeting is being recorded. We do post our meetings publicly, just in the vein of being open, and so those things are there that will likely end up with probably potentially a playlist special for this working group for the for the CI focus. The CI focus to me, and certainly others chime in if you feel like this isn't what you think of as being the areas of focus of the group, but I associate build and release, continuous integration, testing, some infrastructure-oriented things to what, to kind of the focus of what this group would take on. Lastly, is there's also kind of for the first time in a long time, there's a mailing list set up that has, I believe, most everyone's been invited, and so it's up to you if you'd like to join the mailing list. I figured that the mailing list might be a good way for Adina and Saim and consequently for everyone else here to message one another outside of the Slack channel if that's needed, if that's helpful. And so with that, there's a bit of infrastructure set up, a bit of topics kind of teed up. I don't know that they're necessarily in any priority order other than this first one here, which is a little bit of a bigger item, but it's an important one. And so with that, Adina and Simon, thank you guys for stepping up to help us figure out how to make how to have better sausage making machinery, software sausage making machinery. So with that, yeah, where do you guys want to start? How do you anything you guys want to change about the way that we kind of have this set up, or
Hi, Lee. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Lee, thank you for making this group, and we're really the plan of here in this group is that we can move forward consistently without removing the hurdles that we already have in our projects. And I think I think we have take once I have thinking that we have taken an approach that I and Dina working together. So one of our members are looking forward to manage the release pipeline and build strategy for that, and other members is looking forward the initial issues is that we have sort out. So also I think in that meeting note here, the guys who have more than 1 year working in Meshery, they have kind of gray out or color their code, their name. So I have known that these guys are working in the Meshery project for more than 1 years, and also who have DevOps background previously. They have working the DevOps field. They have grayed out their name in a meeting list, so I can know that. Can I assign the work accordingly in the moving forward? So one thing is that, and also I think the strategy that I have decided that we have the Adina and I working together as a team, and also one of the members is looking forward to build the automation strategy where we headed what are the tools available, what are the right directions for the build automation, and one is for working the initial issues is that we have the better understanding of how the project is going on, so we can make better decision going forward. So Adina, I think you step in if you have any idea, comments on that.
I'm good. You have ideas on approaches. So I will just double check if I understand properly, even if it's in the meeting. So you have two directions. One is for release managing and automations and whatever is new and tools. And the other one is for the current issues that are facing. And then you have the people who have more than 1 year experience, which I didn't understand exactly where, in which category you put, but that's kind of my understanding. And the two of us, we also need to talk whatever you decide, or you have ideas and experience. So tell me if it's okay what I understood.
Yes, really, that's my point. As you have correctly identified that. So we this week we can make out the separate meeting for that. So we can assign some roles for ourselves. So meanwhile, I think there is 2 points there. There is a lot of improvements that we need to be done in that project, and one is there to get familiar with that project as well. So I've tracked down some list of that we can move in that direction moving forward for our right for us. And one is that for we can have a understanding how the project is built, how is architected, how is the initial flow of that. So I think this week we can make out a separate meeting for that, and then we decide how we can move forward.
Okay. What time is it now for you? What's the hour right now for you? So I can tell you my availability. That's why I'm asking. So I can tell you every time when you can.
Dina, I think that's time is preferable for me, 7 and 8 to 9 for where we are talking now. Before that, so 7 to 8. So uh, now we are talking in that time, so minus the time that we have previously. So I have pinged you, so we can discuss the timing as well, and the day as well. So I have
Okay.
mailed you or the Slack to you.
So, as my availability, I'm practically available in any day except Saturday and Sunday, starting with the hour of this when we had when we start this meeting today, for instance. For me, it was 5 p.m. in the afternoon. So anytime with these hours, starting for the next 9 hours, I can be available in any time. I have 1 hour
Okay,
behind that, but the rest
good.
I'm available.
Okay, good. Just ping you, and we
And
can.
on Saturday and Sunday, it's the opposite. It's really it's much earlier.
Oh, sure. Okay, okay. I just might be if we can go tomorrow or the next day, not before that. Even Wednesday, Thursday, I can ping you in that same time that we're talking right now. We can decide how things moving forward now.
Okay,
So
thanks.
great. Uh, mm, Okay, Lee, I just want to know that's the people that listed are here. So one of members that I've more than have their 1 year of experience of working so lengthily in the Meshery. So I get to know some, if I can have difficulties, I can ping them out. So show their suggestion, what they are thinking. I think, can you help me on that?
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, as a matter of fact, the almost appropriate for those that feel a little bit comfortable or who have been assisting in some of the workflows to kind of self-signal, if you will. There's a couple of folks that whose names I see on the call that I know have touched either one or many workflows across the repo. So Ashish Gunjan, Singh, Gunjan Paul, Kush Trivedi, and Naveen Jain. Nupur might have. Shubham Kumar is not on the call, but has. There's some other folks who have and aren't on the call. Just because I didn't call out other people's names doesn't mean that they aren't entirely capable, or maybe even more capable than those that I did call out. I was just calling out names of people that I know have literally like made a commit or changed the workflows that we use today. And so just to help facilitate and provide some context and background for, well, for at least half of us, I'll say this, that if you're unaware, if you're unaware, Meshery, well, the layer 5 projects, of which Meshery being the biggest one, are all under the layer 5 IO org. All of them, I think it used to be the case that we were using Travis CI when the project first started. As GitHub Actions came out, we've converted over to using GitHub Actions and have workflows in each of the repositories defined under the .github folder. Those workflows are under a workflows folder. As an example, the main repo, Meshery, it has two workflows. One of them is very much so.
Lee, sorry to interrupt, but are you presenting something right now?
Oh no, yes, I thought, well, or I thought I was. Oh boy. Thank you, Nupur. All right. Good. If you guys are not seeing the Meshery repo, then please interrupt again. Please let me know. So in this repo, there's, and as in each of the repositories, you'll find a .github folder. In different repositories, you'll find differing amounts of config about how it is that that repository is configured to use GitHub. Each of them, though, should have a workflows folder. Most of them will only have a ci.yaml, and it's not necessary that that YAML file is called CI, but that's just the convention that we've used pervasively across each repository. This is probably where much of this group's focus is sort of conceptually intended to be. I'm gonna look at this one because it's fairly short and because I think it will expand our minds a little bit about the ways in which part of how we might use GitHub Actions and workflows in the projects and in the community. This is a relatively simple workflow that calls an action to, or calls an action and is invoked whenever someone stars Meshery. So whenever a user clicks this star button, that's a moment of celebration for us. And there's a little merry band of leprechauns that dance in the corner over here when that happens. So, and to help us keep track of the fact that that's happening and help everyone take pride in the fact that that's happening, this workflow will be invoked when the star is clicked. And it's very simple. It just messages the Slack channel called Buzz. So all of you are inside of the Layer 5 community Slack. There's a channel in there called Buzz. You will notice that you'll notice this message in there. It's kind of nice. So I wanted to do a couple of things. One, say that we're using across the projects GitHub Actions and workflows, that these have been building up somewhat rapidly recently. Folks like Kush and I think some others have been working to make sure that that not all jobs, not all aspects of the workflow are executing every single time that someone submits a PR, every time that they push a new commit to that PR, because it's not always appropriate that each of these run. And so trying to optimize this a little bit as we've gone to expand it, I think that that's been helpful. This goes on for a while. As many of you are familiar and some of you aren't familiar with the various languages that are used in the project in Meshery, Go is a central language. JavaScript with React, Next.js is another for the Meshery UI. And there's another component, there's kind of 3 components inside of Meshery repo itself. One of those, the biggest one is Meshery server, if you will, is Meshery. Another component is the UI, and so this is where our React app is. Another one is Meshery CTL. It's a command line client. As the project and the community grows, it's likely that that Meshery CTL and Meshery UI might split out into their own repositories. We wouldn't want to do that until, we wouldn't want to do that currently. And that's another discussion. We can walk through that. My point of calling out the fact that there are different components and well, I said there are 3, but actually I'm skipping one. There's a 4th one, and it's a set of docs. It's the docs for the project. The project docs are based on Jekyll. It's possible to also pull out this 4th component into a separate repo, but right now it's in the repository. And so my point is these individual components can have different build needs. And when someone submits a pull request that only contains changes in the docs, for example, it's not necessary to run all of the other jobs to build all of the rest of the system. So some amount of optimization and a focus there is kind of nice. So what I was trying to do is give some context as to kind of the environment that we're in. I'm going to touch on briefly, skip across a couple of topics that I think will spur some conversation and maybe set some initial goals. So so one of those topics is the use of bots. Bots can be used for curating issues, identifying issues as stale, triaging them, trying to get them into the right area, or trying to make sure that if one is ready for a review, that it's flagged as such, that's labeled as such. Others can be used to welcome people as they maybe submit their first issue or their first pull request. So we just did one of these today. I won't digress and demo it or show it, but it's up there and you can see it. Rather, what I would say is, as we're exploring things like bots or the use of automation like Release Drafter to help us when we get toward the end of a release and we go back to create our change log and our release notes, that automation like this might be quite helpful in terms of making that easy. By the way, as I walk through this, I know these aren't all of my ideas for certain. There are individuals that have either thought of these things and or are working on them. So if you would, each of you, if you would, it would probably be helpful, back to Simon's question about getting more familiar with each of you and kind of wherever your focus are. If you would put your name maybe next to some of these things. We've got a couple here, but something like some marker or some way of kind of denoting that, hey, on this topic, these are the folks you might want to go talk to, or these are people that might want to work on it. That would help. On this, there's another resource to call out, and that's that some of these changes to how the project is built, if they're done, just like other bugs, if those changes are done incorrectly, they might break the build. And that can be anxiety invoking for those that are trying to improve the CI, and also for the others that are trying to get at a particular build. So because of that, and because you need the ability to test your continuous integration and the changes that you're making, there's a repository called Meshery Temp. It just acts as a sandbox for trying out new bots, for trying out Release Drafter or new changes in the flows. If we need another sandbox, we can get one of those as well. All of you, if you've contributed to the project in GitHub, I think you very quickly end up receiving an invite to join the GitHub org, or the Layer 5 org. When you do, each of you should have the appropriate level of permission to this sandbox to play and explode things, to play and write to the sandbox. And so I wouldn't expect that this is functional code or really working builds per se. So if we need another sandbox, that's fine. We can make one of those, that's fine. You guys are also all welcome to test out those changes in your own forked repos. I know that sometimes that can be inconvenient based on the logic that's included inside of the workflows, because some of that logic like pushes images to Docker Hub or requires particular secrets that are stored inside of the repos. So fair enough. On that, I'm gonna try to back off again. I'm gonna go ahead and put some people's names next to some of these things that I think they've either raised up as a question, or I think that they might be instrumental in helping get done. So I'll just do that in the background here. But again, just to help facilitate the conversation, are there I had given perspective about one of the larger items that I for my part, can consider as something of a priority, and that being the establishment of release channels. Does anyone else have other items that they think we might want to chew off first? Something like a release drafter, something that's a little more less involved, a little more straightforward. So to kind of fill in so interrupt me, anyone, as we're going. I'm listing down another known issue, and that is that if you're familiar with the CLI, Meshery CTL, when you run it will tell you what the client version is, and it'll also, in an inappropriate fashion, it'll also tell you what the server version is. The reality is that that's kind of made up and fake, and so I'm going to demo that real quick. This is one that I think might be of interest to some folks, because this is an issue that helps with functionality of the project, but needs to be addressed in this working group. So the issue that I'm describing is that here's the command line tool for interacting with Meshery. There's a few different commands that can be run. One of those is version. So if you do Meshery CTL, sorry, it's not a flag, it's a command. So if you do Meshery CTL version, me on my system, and I think this is the latest release, it'll say that the client version of Meshery, and the client, by the way, is Meshery CTL. So the Meshery CTL version is this, and you can check your local binary. It's, SHA. This is the SHA of that release. It also will tell you that there's the server version, like the Meshery containers that you might be running. Oh, that's pretty ugly. The mesh, it's hard to see, but I'm running a bunch of containers, and some of those are Meshery. I'm running Meshery. And it looks like my Meshery was updated 27 minutes ago. That server, Meshery, the client here is telling me that server version is also 3.14. And it's actually not. There's some work to be done to ensure that it's actually not. It's a stubbed out piece of functionality. It's sort of lying to us at the moment. When we execute this command, it actually needs to interrogate Meshery server, just hit a REST API on Meshery server and pull back the latest version number. It's not doing that right now. And part of the reason it's not doing that is, one, because I don't think we have that REST API, which is easy enough to make. But the reason we haven't made it is because when Meshery is built, this tag, this version tag, is available in the workflow that executes, but we're not persisting that number, like to the file system of Meshery server. Like, we're not embedding it anywhere in that build, in the artifact that's released. So this artifact, this container image, it doesn't know what version it is. And so consequently, that's why I'm listing that down as something of a smaller item that the group can take on.
Do you want it like an image tag or like an image property, or or like a file inside, or like a REST API? Sorry, I should shut up.
No, yeah, that's a great question. I had, for the most part, considered that it was sort of two things. That it was basically a config.yaml that would be, or a something else .yaml that would be a file that was deposited inside the Docker container, but that, and in part because there will be other configuration items that will be kept inside of that YAML file about how it is that Meshery should run and that. But that there would be an API that allows clients like Meshery CTL to request basically that server info, or whatever that endpoint ends up being. I think there's an open issue here too. I should have referenced it. I was just. So we don't have to focus on this one per se, but I just, conceptually it's sort of small enough to wrap your mind around, I think. So this sort of brings up maybe another item, and just to help everyone get familiar with how releases are done today. So today, hopefully I'm still sharing the same screen. So right now I'm navigating over to the Meshery repository to the releases section. Shivai, who's on the call, is wearing the release manager hat for our V0 4.0 release. And so he's helping organize the release notes and a blog about it, and he's actually enhancing the Meshery.io site. Shivai, in a moment, maybe you want to speak to the progress there, but I bring this up to say that releases of Meshery are done through this vehicle, through using GitHub in this way. That what we end up doing is creating a tag, and that we use semantic versioning in this project. Semantic versioning and kind of the formatting of these tags, and the fact that we use releases here and create releases here, that's called out inside of this Meshery build and release strategy document. So when the next release comes up, we end up drafting a new release. At the same time, we end up creating a new tag and formatting our release notes, etc. When this release is published, that just invokes a build. It invokes that ci.yaml that we were looking at briefly earlier. And that ci.yaml has a number of jobs inside the workflow. And so those jobs will check for the presence of a version tag. Basically, the presence of a version tag when a build is happening, when a workflow is running through, that's an indicator that this is in fact a release. It is time to produce, compile all the artifacts and make a release. And I think we can probably see some of that logic here, just taking, for example, Meshery CTL, the CLI component, as it's executing various parts of the workflow, there's a step that it skipped because this last merge did not include a release tag, and because it did not include that, it skips over this step. So it basically invokes Go Releaser as a utility to help compile various compile binaries of Meshery under various architectures. It ran through and did its thing about creating a Mac compatible Meshery CTL and one for Linux and FreeBSD and Windows. It did that, but it did not make a new release because there wasn't a tag present. The tag that would have been present would have been created here and part of a release, part of that flow. So Shivai, since we're talking about kind of release management and sort of the way that the mechanics by which releases are made, you've been working in this area for a little bit. Do you want to speak to some forthcoming changes?
Yeah, sure. Lee, since it got delayed a bit, should we also include some of the latest changes that we have been making to the CTL, to the Meshery CTL and the JWT tokens within the version 0.4.0?
Yes. Yeah.
I guess because that will be a good addition to add, or if you want, we can probably then create like version 0.4.1 or something for including that if you want. But since it's going to be a major release, we can probably just include the JWT token as well in that.
Sounds good to me. Yeah, it's appropriate.
And the second thing that I wanted to ask was, since the entire release, whenever we create a new build, that is being automated using the YML file that we already have. So again, as we have already discussed, and Kush has also given us details on the release drafter. So even the points that we are making on, say, a new release that we are creating, I guess even that can be automated in terms of all the release notes, because we get just the release notes and we just have to simply add that and like the markdown file, because the release notes drafter, it will also create like sort of a markdown file, and it will automatically even format the entire document, and we can just directly copy that and paste it to even further automate our entire process. So I guess if we can have that, since we are already talking about the continuous integration, so probably if that can also be taken up as a way to further automate the entire process of building and creating new releases.
That sounds that sounds like a wonderful topic to present. Like that, yeah. That's in general. I mean, without trying to pre-bless that motion, it sounds pretty great to me, and I think it's one of those things that we would do well on. Adina and Simon, if it makes sense to you guys to maybe look to next week to ask for someone to kind of present what release drafter is and how they consider that we would use it, and maybe show an example of it being used. And
I guess because probably Kush had created a draft PR. I'm not mistaken. I'd spoken to him. So Kush, if you can probably just, I guess you had created a pull request on one of the test repositories, right? If I'm not mistaken. Yeah, like it's already there.
so,
Kush was there.
yeah, I guess no. I guess I thought he was, but no. So
He was there at the starting of the call.
So Adina and Simon, maybe that's what do you guys think? Maybe you could work with Kush to see if he can demo during next week's call, release drafter.
Yes, Lay, I think he has a. I think he's working on that. Last time we have a small discussion on that topic, release drafter. So I think I ping him again, so he could prepare a demo and he present it to the next call next Monday. So one thing that I want to know, that's every we have branches available in the GitHub, the layer 5 project that I'm thinking. So I think every member of the team working on their own branch, and then he commits that, and then he merge a pull request out of there, and then we submit his pull request on the master branch, and then the release drafter or the release versioning going forward. Is it there's a process is that's the same that I'm thinking, or is change?
That's my understanding of how a release drafter works. Yep. Then it automates the tracking, the kind of the compiling a list of issues that have been addressed since in the time after the prior release. But yeah, Kush can.
One thing, just a small point that I think every member of the team that working in the Meshery, they have their own branches available for that. So every time they commit a change to that, so we have how many changes he committed to that before resolving the issue or completing the feature is going to the release drafter there. So they have 3 commits. Then that in that position of the day, and I think that's a process that we're following here, or is something change?
Nope, yep, that's the process. There's one item that we were talking about that's kind of related to that, and that's that there's a sandbox. There's a repository that functions as a sandbox hosted within the Layer 5 IO org. It is certainly the case that everyone can fork Meshery and make changes in their local repository and change the way that the builds are done. Some aspects of the build, some of the jobs though, can be kind of a pain to try to test in your own repo. Everyone can do it. It just requires more setup. And so it was some time ago that we had just forked a copy of the repo to just function as a sandbox to let people play within. But you're right, the contribution flow for all of us is to fork any repo that we want to contribute to, make those changes, create a feature branch, if you will, even if it isn't a feature, maybe they're fixing a bug, but create a branch. And that contribution process is called out in the contributing.md in the main Meshery repo. A flow to it from here.
So Lee, one more thing is that the images that we have, that they're all available on the Docker Hub, or
Yep.
they are hosting in the Azure, AWS, or anything anywhere else device. They are just hosting in the Docker Hub or anything else that's hosting in there.
Yep, good question. So the going back into the build and release strategy doc, this section on artifacts will provide people with the URL here to Docker Hub, which is the only place currently that builds are being pushed to. Well, I shouldn't say that. That's not inaccurate. Let me go back to the doc because that's the place where Meshery server and Meshery adapter container images are being pushed to. The other artifact like Meshery CTL, it's being pushed to GitHub currently. It's made available through Homebrew, Scoop, kind of package managers like that, or just direct download. Yeah, and those are, then the docs, they get published on a GitHub Pages site. It might, yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's advantageous to try to get those into AWS ECR or some other image repositories. It might be. These are all public repos. So I think if you go to the layer 5 org, you'll end up seeing 19 repos. So one for for each adapter. And
Lee, the question that I'm asking here is that's, I think AWS providing an app mesh, the kind of service mesh they are providing, self-managed app mesh. So if we have a roadmap for that, that's we can link in that app mesh to the survey. We can, the Meshery can do that. So if I have any roadmap for that, that we can in future go for the cloud hosted AWS, Azure, or GCP kind of things, so we can host these images on their container, just like ACR or ECS. Do we have a plan initially for that, or we don't have?
Yeah, good question. So there is a plan for an app mesh adapter. I spoke with AWS last Monday, I believe, about their ability, their willingness to come and spend time to help build out this app mesh adapter. I've spoken to them any number of times. I don't hold out hope that they will come do that soon. And consequently, we may not get to this adapter soon. Not because we don't desire to, just because there aren't, I don't know, with folks, with some of the folks on this call, some of them might want to try their hand at finishing off this adapter, because right now it's just in an alpha state. Yeah, and then when container images are built of this adapter, that currently they would be pushed to Docker Hub. But yeah, if it makes sense to also host those images in AWS and ECR to help AWS customers who are using AppMesh and also want to use Meshery to help manage AppMesh, if it helps to have those images in ECR, that makes some sense. We can push there as well. So very good. Maybe I'll help kind of close up here. And it sounds like a couple of items as we go to wrap up our first CI working group meeting. One is, I think, something like Adina and Simon, you guys might have some catch up that you want to do. And so you guys will probably get together at some point this week. That next week, because Kush wasn't here or wasn't here while we talked about it, we gave him an action item. So that's hopefully
Actually, I had to drop out of the call due to limited bandwidth.
Oh, okay, very good that you're back. So Kush, now that you're here, Adina and Simon wanted to ask you if you might do something next week.
I think we have already had a presentation of release draft in a week before's meeting on Meshery temp repo.
Oh, okay, nice. Yeah, there's some questions about how it works. I don't think everybody's familiar or comfortable.
Sure, we can do it again next week then.
Nice, perfect. Okay, so that was kind of the second item. In my mind, we talked about this a little bit. This is I would suggest that this is a good one to start to wrangle. It's not necessarily critical that we're supporting the server version in Meshery CTL in that command. It's more important that we start to, exactly, Adina, to what you were asking about, that we start to capture the version tag inside of the Meshery container as it's built and have that available to facilitate an API call for Meshery itself to be cognizant of what version it is, because today it doesn't know what version it is. So. And Simon, if maybe creating an issue about the need to potentially support or push images to other cloud-hosted repositories, that's something to look at. I guess to help facilitate and make sure that Simon and Adina are able to wrangle these items. Of those that are on the call, does anyone want to signal that there were particular things that we spoke about that you're interested in looking at? And since I feel entirely comfortable to do this, I'm going to suggest a few things. So one, Kush is going to demo next week, release drafter. Two, if Shivai doesn't demo on Wednesday's call the release notes for the upcoming 040, that he would do it on Monday, that next time that we meet here, and kind of demo the blog, and then Shivai the new releases UI on Meshery.io. That would happen. I'll also suggest that Adina, it sounds like you might be inclined to help ensure that the Meshery server tag is going into the container. Maybe iterating on a spec on that would be good. And Sarah, I know we've got some review to do on Meshery CTL and the commands that it has. So I don't know if that Meshery CTL version might be of interest to you as well. So the nice thing is that when no one says no, that means that there's an implicit yes, which is great, which is what I love to hear. Nice, very good. Got it.
I have like some open question requests, not sure if they are valid or not. Since I'm pretty new and Usually I get started really, really slow. I think I'm the slowest person. For this CI group or in the future, that doesn't need to be next or whatever. For me, it will be more easy to say which are the Meshery projects or components. Like you said, you have the front-end one, which is in React. Then you have the Meshery CTL, Meshery server, docs, maybe projects, SMI things or things like that. Do we, on the release, what do we consider to be projects? Only Meshery, only those two, which are on the Docker Hub and on the GitHub. So the
Yeah, a great question. I think in part what you're asking is like, is there a guide to the repositories and sort of a categorization of what they are?
actually, it's my need to destroy things, not to destroy, to make them in pieces, which is not necessarily good. So you said docs are they don't need to be built every time or something like that, or that need to be removed from the Meshery GitHub repo. That will be a separate repo and things like this. Okay, yeah, maybe a docs or I don't know, just to identify and have like a continuous list which are things to be versioned. Because from what I see, we have only one type of version which is used for two types of version, which is used for Meshery and Meshery CTR, but you also have docs, workshops, CMI, MMI things, right?
Yeah, that's a good.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, and that's a great point about the docs not being versioned, because there's just a presumption that you're looking at the latest and it's speaking to latest. So that's a great. That's an item that needs to be. Nipur, I called out your name there briefly because I think you were considering maybe writing a little bit of a guide to repos.
Yeah, early I am doing that. I started that. Initially, I can discuss the rough idea of it. I forgot to share the document with you. Uh, the part I'm doing currently is I am first trying to differentiate the projects on the basis of front end and back end, and then on what specific language. Like for example, in Meshery CTL, the project is on Go language, so I'll do that kind of, which GitHub will help me that which project is under which language. So that kind of what is that flow chart or a division of projects I'm doing. I may need help of some people who are already like known. Like I'm not familiar with all of the project. I'm familiar with few. Like I'm not familiar with front end projects. So as I will also try to write description about all of the projects, like a very minute description which can be easier for newcomers to understand. So I will like if anyone wants to volunteer for help in this field.
I really want to. I'm trying to hold back. Yeah, and Nipur, it sounds like part of the documentation that you would be putting together there would be very helpful to have either in or sort of linked to the contributing MD, because that's certainly.
Like yeah, I also feel that there must be a link in contributing.md, not that, like I feel not the entire document but a link to it. Like your suggestion would be good on that.
Nice. Well, folks, we're a few minutes after actually. So, Sai, Medina, anything else we want to chat through today? I think we got some action items maybe for next week. Now.
Lee, I think if we have time left in the next meeting, we can discuss WSL2. I think it's a very good technology. I think it's a good time to introduce to the guys, because I think eventually my goal is to go for that, because Microsoft and done a tremendous job executing two operating system in a one way, and you have can this sandboxes two environment and simple way. So I try to prepare some demos for that, or some slides shares, and if we time permits, we can discuss on that WSL2.
Nice, very good. And is that related to CI or good for like the development meeting?
I think Lee is moving forward. I think it's our plan is to it's going to create a consistent environment for that. And WSL2 is one of the great way to consistentize the environment, because some of the people are working the Linux, some of the people are working the Mac, some are working the Windows. So WSL2 is kind of a thing. They have mixture the Windows kind of thing and Linux kind of thing. So I think just prepare for guys to that. That's eventual goal is about that to it hit that spark, hit that mark as well. It,
Yeah, nice. Yeah, right. As a, if for nothing else, a guide to how to set up your IDE, if you will, or your development environment in WSL2, and yeah, and then potentially to the extent that that's leveraged as part of CI as well. Nice.
yes, Lee, just one note. I think Windows VS Code has a very good extension there, WSL2. So they have a UI that working in the Windows domain there, and Windows operating system. They are running on the Windows operating system, the UI of that VS Code. But that the command line, the server side is running in the Linux operating system. So it's kind of a very kind of heaven for our web developers. They are working in a two different environment and fighting for their environment variable, exposes ported networks, and blah blah blah. So they have. I think it's a good time. We have so just a kind of an introduction what they are and what their focus.
Awesome. Sounds good. You ping Nuno on that too. He may want to parlay with you or help have some ideas.
Yes. Lee, okay. I also ping. No.
Well, fair enough. Now I'm really sensitive to the fact that we're like 10 minutes over, and so we should let everyone go. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining the first CI call. So lots of work to do in this area. We'll see hopefully all of you either on Wednesday or Friday. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye everyone.
Bye bye.
Bye, everyone.